Greetings, fellow Trekkies. Reginald here with my first Eaglemoss Star Trek Discovery, the official Starships Collection review. And for today's episode, we'll be reviewing the USS Shenzhou, NCC 1227. So I'm going to put the box off to the side for a moment. And like any new collection for Eaglemoss, they come out with a catalog when you first subscribe. And in the catalog, it's going to show some of the upcoming issues. So we can kind of zoom in here. We've got the Shepherd class, the Shran, the Klingon Bird of Prey, Kook class destroyer. There's actually 20 models slated for the collection so far, and that's not including specials. We can see here the USS Jaeger. And of course, issue 2 I'm really looking forward to is the Discovery herself. Also, there's going to be a series of specials, special edition ships like the Sarcophagus ship, which is going to be a larger, more expensive model, and the Empress's flagship, the Charon. So, pretty cool little catalog here. So now we're going to jump to the magazine. So here we have the magazine that comes with the model. And as you can see on the front, it's a nice high-gloss image of the USS Shenzhou. Blue nebula in the background. Looks pretty cool. And on the inside, we can expect to learn about the profile of the USS Shenzhou, designing the ship. And you can see here it talks about how to assemble the vessel on the stand. That's sometimes important. Specifications. Walker class, affiliated with the Federation, launched 23rd century, length 423 meters, captained by Philippa Georgiou. And here we see a really nice view of the CG render, I should say, of the USS Shenzhou. And you can actually make out the phaser cannons along the dorsal section of the ship, and the heavy deflector dish with the 2 antennae, odd purple glowy bits. And this tells the story of the binary stars and basically what happened to the Shinzou in the show. And here we can see some profile views of the ship. Again, some really nice CG renders, well lit, that we can actually see. And the ship was designed by the legendary John Eaves. He had a specific set of rules that he had to go by when designing the ship. Basically, the warp engines had to not be round, which was the traditional style of that era, and the ship had to have a squattier profile. So he took a few cues from the NX-01, and you can kind of see the lineage between the NX-01 and the Shenzhou, which I'll actually show you here a little bit later. And taking a look at some of the concept art, just absolutely amazing. How many steps he had to go through to be able to get it right. Something very unusual about the Shenzhou is that the bridge is actually located on the ventral section of the hull versus the dorsal section. So that's something unique to the Shenzhou. And again, we can see some renders of the ship as it gets closer to the final concept. And yep, starting to look more like the Shenzhou. And part of the color scheme of the ship, it looked too bland, and they wanted to kind of pep it up a little bit, so they decided to go with a red color palette, and that's where we get the signature look that we actually see in the show. So very cool. Also, John Eaves got a lot of inspiration on designing the Shenzhou from the X-planes of the 1940s. And you actually can see some of the lineage of the X-planes here with just the fins on the top of the ship and whatnot. Just some of the way that it's designed. So very, very cool concept. Cool ship. And, of course, the next issue is going to be the USS Discovery, which I'm really looking forward to. All right, so on to the ship itself. All right, and here we have our model of the USS Shenzhou in all of her glory. So right away you can see that red striping along the sides of the ship and the registry number. Part of why John Eaves wanted to do that was because it looked a little bit strange and forced putting it across the front of the ship. We can see here a little bit of that purple glowy bit from the deflector. There's the heavy deflector with the two antennae. Along the top part of the ship, that seems to be where the crew quarters are. And you can see that 1940s stylized fin there on the back. And lots of windows along the side of the ship. And we can also see there where the phaser cannons actually deploy into attack position. So where a traditional 24th century Starfleet ship would have phaser strips, this ship has phaser cannons. And I believe that right back here, these are phaser beam arrays. There is one scene where it looks like Discovery's using phaser beams. Up top, this is possibly phaser beams or tractor beam emitters. And then, of course, along the back, we can see the shuttle bay. And for whatever reason, the shuttle bays seem to be just absolutely ginormous on Discovery vessels. So let's see. We've also got our warp nacelles. And the warp nacelles are designed a little bit differently. Well, I should say a lot of bit differently, because there's no visible Bazard collectors here at the front. And if we look towards the back, there's actually, if I can get it held up to the light. Alright, so here we can really see into the engine, and I believe that is supposed to be the Bazard collectors along the inner part of the engine. And in the show, you can actually see at the tips of the warp nacelles, the front and the back, a little bit of a blue glow of warp plasma. Towards the back of the ship, we can see it's got the impulse engines, and they're purple. They're painted purple on this model, but actually in the show, most of the scenes, the engines are red, with the exception of the Mirror Universe, where they are a bright purple. So, pretty strange. Flipping the model over, I can take a look at the ventral section. So a lot of really great detail in here. You can see the front window panels for the bridge. Just an absolutely massive, massive bridge. And under that, it looks like that's a little sensor pod. You've got windows, several layers. You can see the different layers of decks here. And we've got our registry numbers on either side. Registry number here. So yeah, Discovery's the Shinzou is the only ship that we've ever seen in Star Trek with a bridge on the ventral section. And maybe that's used partially for when they're doing survey missions of a planet, so that they can actually see visibly what's on the planet, not just with sensors. And maybe that helps with when the ship is in atmospheric mode and actually flying through a planet's atmosphere. We don't know. So now we're going to take a look at the ship on the stand. Okay, so here we have a side-by-side comparison of the NX-01 Enterprise and our new USS Shenzhou. And you can definitely see a comparison between the two ships. They do share a lineage. The NX-01 is an exploration ship from the 22nd century, where the Shinzou was actually designed to be an exploration ship of the early 23rd century. And of course, the Constitution class took over that role later on. But definitely some similarities here between the two ships. And very good that John Eaves decided to stay within Star Trek traditions when designing the Shinzou. I think it's one of the best looking ships of the collection. So this was my first Eaglemoss review, and if you guys like the video, share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.